Hello, adventurers. Tonight, we are going to find out if it's worth being a paid DM with Professor J. I am joined by my fellow Dark Alchemist, the dead Professor Scott.
Good evening, everybody.
And I am joined by DM Evanson.
How you doing? Good to be here.
And I am joined by Professor J.
Hello, hello.
And I think I clicked the wrong button, so we might actually be live on YouTube.
We are live.
So let's go right into it then. We're doing this tonight. We got to do something else Sunday morning. So Professor J, we always like to start off our Dungeons and Dragons story with maybe a tale of adventure as a gamer, a player, or a dungeon master. Do you have something you could share with us?
Sure. I'll give you a dungeon master one. I don't get to play a lot because I'm usually the dungeon master, but probably a pretty funny one was I had a pretty new player, actually a Foundry player, who had played many years ago, once or twice, and had sort of lost the plot completely. And it was him and his wife, and it was during COVID, and they were interested in doing some, gaming or whatever, and they were kind of semi-friends. I said, sure, I'll put something together for you. So we ended up doing a adventure that ended up in an arena battle, but it was in Eberron, which happens to be my favorite campaign setting. And taking inspiration from some of the miniature war games I played over years, I decided to make all of the arena teams based on a Malifaux faction. And one of them was based on a guild leader named Hoffman, who basically was a guy in a mech suit, for lack of a better term, a steampunk mech suit. Nice. And my players were given sort of options to try and do what they could to tilt the odds in their favor prior to the fight, up to and including trying to shift betting odds and things like that. And one of my newer players, who was playing an artificer, decided that he wanted to try and make Professor Hoffman's suit malfunction mid-fight by rigging it ahead of time.
I like it.
So he went in there and he got his D20 all warmed up. And this poor player had a habit of, when it was time to make a big roll, he would roll a 1 every time. So he rolls a 1, and I was like, okay, you pull it off. And I warned him. I said, this is high technology. It's beyond your scale. So if you mess this roll up, it's going to be, it'll work, but there might be consequences. Yeah. So he rolls a 1. He wants to use inspiration. We're using D&D 5e. I'll use inspiration. Okay. Of course, he rolls another 1.
Wow.
And okay, on we go to the fight the next morning. And I had a sort of a critical failure chart for this guy's equipment. And I said, well, if something weird goes on in the battle, I'll roll the chart. And I rolled the chart. And the net effect of it was he was going to blow up. He was going to self-destruct and take out a good chunk of space around him. And one of the other players thought this would be a great opportunity to sort of win some PR with the crowd by being a hero. So he thunderwaved this particular NPC into the wall of the arena so he would blow up as many crowd members as possible, to make his fact, oh my God, these horrible people, look, they're bringing these technology into the arena. This is terrible. And so he did, and he blew up a whole bunch of the arena. A bunch of civilians were injured. And this player actually was kind of upset about him messing up the rolls. I mean, it's just a game, but he was really kind of upset about it. Yeah. And he spent the next day like DMing me. I feel bad. My character would feel awful. What can I do to make this better? And I just thought it was really interesting that he could have such an effect for what was effectively really just 2 rolls. So that was a fun one. That was a recent one. So that one sticks out in my mind.
So your favorite campaign setting is you said Eberron?
Yeah, definitely.
And why does that really stand out then, Eberron? What do you like about it?
I like a few things about it. One, I like the fact that it's grounded in like a fantasy World War I, post-World War I aesthetic. I think that makes everything available in the fantasy spectrum. So if you want to go with the steampunk, it's there. If you want to stay to sort of high fantasy, you can easily do that. I also think that gives you more of a range of adventures. I like pulp fiction and pulp action generally for D&D. I think it's a good fit. I think most players tend to make characters that have questionable motivations or questionable backgrounds. We've all had murder hobos in our group that don't really have a motivation. They're there to be there. I think that fits the pulp world a lot. Probably my favorite thing about it, though, is that it's not the Forgotten Realms. There aren't 300 different named characters, all level 20, who really should be saving the world, and you don't really matter here. In Eberron, everyone that mattered has been killed off in the 100 years of war that preceded the adventures, and you are it. If you don't solve it, it can't get solved. And so I think that puts the onus where it should on the adventurers.
So that's kind of happened in our current campaign, the World of Erendor, where DM Evanson has assigned us, some missions, and maybe not the current one, but the previous one, we were like, wait, we're doing this. Like, aren't there like better people? You know, we had to fix a magical staff, and it was a challenge.
He's also managed to off 2 of the major archmages in the first 6 months of the campaign. So we're moving up in the ranks fast.
There you go, working as intended.
Yeah. So let's jump into a virtual tabletop. In the green room, we were talking that you are using the Foundry system, but you actually are on the Start Play system. So tell me first about Start Play. Professor J is available on Start Play, and he has 1 spot left, and we'll put the links down below if you want to join his current adventure. They'll be able to sign up on the Start Play.
Yeah, so Start Playing Games it's pretty famous. If you Google pay to play D&D, you're going to find it. It's where most of the, maybe all of the actual, pay to play DM games that are out there are to be found. And the prices range. They're I've seen as cheap as $15 a session, and I've seen, and they're full, $40 a session.
Yeah.
It can range quite a bit. So I mean, I've been doing it for about 1.5 years, 2 years now, and for me, the way I started was actually sort of saying, well, why would anybody pay me to do this?
Yeah.
Why? So I said, you know what? Let me find out. So I found a game that was $20 a game, and I joined it.
Yeah.
And I did a couple of sessions, and I said, let me see what this is all about, because maybe these people are putting in effort and time and work that I'm just unwilling to do.
Yeah.
It really could be. And I'd already been doing Foundry-based DMing for a bunch of my personal friends, so I didn't mind doing it, and I was familiar with the system. And the person I played with, he had strengths I didn't have, and he had strengths, and I had strengths he didn't have. He was very good at voices. I was cursed with a Brooklyn accent, so there's only so much I can do with my vocal range. But he was very good at pulling up a voice that seemed to fit the characters. On the other hand, there wasn't really anything original in anything he was doing. And one of the other players in the game sort of DM'd me one day and said, "Did you notice that all these games are from the Phandalin Adventure series, that he's just pulled off the quest board and he's just reskinned them all? And there really isn't a campaign here." And I said, I didn't even know that book existed. And when I looked into it, I was like, oh, that's all he is doing. And I was like, well, now I don't want to play, because this doesn't really seem like anything other than he's warmed up the table for that week and puts it out of his mind to the next week. And if I'm going to pay for an experience, I expect to get a reasonable amount of customer service. So I said, you know what? Thanks. I appreciate your time. I learned a lot. And I pretty quickly realized I could do this. Like, if he can get $20, I can get $18. And so so I have, and it's worked out pretty well.
Awesome.
So now, did you say previously when we chatted that you tried a $20 game, but you also maybe tried a $40 game to see?
I didn't try that. One, I wasn't going to spend $40. Two, I looked. So the games that were $40, and a lot of them were by the same GM. This particular GM has like 6 or 7 or 8 games running a week.
Wow.
And they're all 4 to 5 players per game. I don't know what he's doing, but he has a fan base. I don't know what else to say. I mean, there are certainly like big content creators on YouTube who run their games through this. So it's definitely an ecosystem. You get a following on a social media, a YouTube, a Twitch, whatever it is, and then you push people here. There are professional voice actors that run games here. So some of that stuff, I'm not. This is very much a side gig. I'm Professor J because I'm a professor at Suffolk, and I'm at the local college here, and I'm also a high school teacher. So those are my real careers. This is my sort of side hustle.
Sure.
Okay. Let's take a look at a video clip. We'll put it on the stage here for our podcast listeners. We have an overhead view of a map, and there's a large monster. There's some magic being shot. A fireball goes off. We have some clowns. Jay, why don't you describe the scene to us and run us through what this map represents on Foundry?
Okay, so this is the Chapel of St. Brenna in the Dungeons of Drakkenheim adventure. Drakkenheim is a relatively recent adventure, maybe 1.5 years ago it came out, something like that. The hard copy, maybe 2. It has a couple of advantages that I really like about it for using it in Foundry. One, there are a number of adventures, Drakkenheim's one of them, that you can buy the entire adventure and have it already pre-populated for you in Foundry. The maps are built. The walls are all set. The line of sights are set. The lighting sources are set. The monsters are all populated. A huge amount of the work is done. All you have to do is understand the adventure, tweak what you want to tweak, and you're 99% of the way there. And so Drakkenheim definitely has that going for it. In this particular case, my players were, in trying to find the Scepter of St. Vitruvio. I won't say more than that because if you haven't played the adventure yet, it's an artifact in the adventure. And they came across a rival faction that was trying to also get it, and negotiations broke down.
Very cool.
The professor has in his game room when we play live, he has an overhead map, and he was able to download Cragmore Castle for the Lost Mines of Philandor, which I'm reskinning into our little swamp adventure. And he was able to do a Fog of War, right? Professor, can you talk about the Fog of War?
Sure. I mean, it's a function on maps on D&D Beyond. You can take any map you want and throw it in there and just cover the whole map with a fog on the player view. And then on the DM view, you can erase it as they go. So as they turn corners and stuff, I could take away the Fog of War. DM Roy was running it. I'm helping him run it because I'm just a little better on the rules. So I'm playing and just not making decisions for the group. So I could run the map for him and just take away the Fog of War and stuff as we went.
Yeah. In that particular group, we have newer players who haven't played in years and years. So they're very excited to play. And the professor is another campaign with Dave. So he was willing to take a little backseat and help me be like a second DM. So Professor J, in this one, do you have a Fog of War, and how does some of the assets work, and what can you do with the map? In this particular case, it's pre-made. I saw some fireball effects and some effects. What else can you do?
It definitely has Fog of War. So this particular view you're seeing is the DM view. This is my view as the DM. If you were a player, you wouldn't be able to see through the walls. The walls on the left, the circular sort of half moon walls, those are to the chapel. Those would be completely blocked. Those windows, though, would allow line of sight, and you could be able to see through them. On the right-hand side, sort of middle-ish of the screen, there's a little wall, low garden wall. That's what they call a terrain wall, where the way that works is a pretty interesting little feature. You will be able to see over it. That won't be a problem. But if there's another terrain wall behind it, it would block line of sight. And people use that for things like pillars or trees. So you can actually see the graphic of the tree, but the back sort of side of the tree would block your line of sight. Otherwise, it's just going to be like there's a pillar, but there's a big black space in the middle of the screen. The fireball effects, those were mods. And that's a huge part of why I like Foundry. Foundry is a very, 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 very robust modding system. And lots of Patreons make their living putting mods into the game. The animation effects were from a couple of different mod creators. Automated Animations, the JB2A asset library. I might have gotten some of those letters mixed up, but if you Google it, you find it. And so it does things like has an audio effect, has a visual effect. Almost every spell does. Melee attacks do. You can customize them. So if you want to make some sort of a custom weapon, like a friend of mine wanted to play a Final Fantasy Gunblade, that was no problem. It was easy to make a sound effect that was both a sword swing and a gun explosion. And it works. So for new players, I think personally the Foundry system is wonderful because it automates a lot of the roles. So players don't have to worry too much about a particular thing or where in their character sheet the save is to be found. On the right-hand side of the screen, off the camera in this particular case, there is the chat window, which literally will prompt the player to click this button to make a save, click this button to make an attack, click this button to do your damage. And it's all automated, which is really nice.
Wow. So let me turn to DM Evanson and ask, when do you decide to have miniatures down on the table as opposed to having a theater of the mind situation?
It depends on if it's a real battle. I mean, if it's gonna be something small, where maybe you're just testing them or something, or a trap that you have, you don't need to necessarily put out minis for. Just something like that, or something that's not gonna be more than 2 combat turns. I wouldn't, especially if you want to keep things moving, because it'd probably take more time to set up than it will to roll, depending on what you're doing, of course. But yeah, that's mainly it. If it's gonna be something complicated like this scenario we're looking at, there's a lot of angles and placement that matters, especially in combat. So this Foundry in particular is really good for line of sight stuff. So that's great.
So Professor J, how do you decide then, when you're in a completely virtual environment and you're doing everything online and not in person, when to set up a map as opposed to do a theater of the mind online? And when you do, we have all basically like these chat boxes, right? You'll see each person and they'll be able to, jump in and just kind of talk, or do you have them raise their hand, or does something pop up that they know it's their turn to go?
There's a couple of ways you can do it. The way I usually do it, if I know I'm having something like a role play scenario or a social situation, one of the options is rather than having a battle map, your background can be what they call a scenescape, which is basically like a first-person view of whatever situation you want. It could be a throne room, the inside of a train car, whatever picture you want to put up there, first-person picture.
Cool.
And the internal system of Foundry has a way for the DM to previously set distances on that. So you can do theater of mind by saying, okay, this creature is 6 foot at this spot in the distance as you shrink the bottle. And it will be able to figure out ranges for you if you want to do a theater of the mind battle, even though you're in a 2D plane. If you want to use it for social situations, there's, again, a couple of mods that are really good. One of them is just called the theater stage. And what that does is it basically brings NPC and PC model portraits up on the side of the screen, like an RPG would have two people having character conversations, and brings up these sorts of chat bubbles, and players can type it out or they can chat it out. It's totally up to them.
So do you find that
Jay, do you find that when you're playing with newer players and it's, click this button for a save, click this button to attack, are they learning the game or are they playing a video game to them?
It's a little of both for sure. One thing I do is I don't turn on a lot of the quality of life mods until a couple of sessions in with new players, because the base experience of Foundry is everything is on your character sheet. So even though you're clicking the character sheet, like for example, if you're going to make a perception check, you have to find the skill list and click on the word perception, and then it'll prompt you, do you want to make a roll with advantage, disadvantage, or a normal roll? Are you adding any modifiers to this? So it does force them to actually find their character sheets and understand them.
That's good.
And a lot of times we use D&D Beyond to actually store the characters and build the characters, because you can import them directly into Foundry.
That's nice.
So that makes it super easy. So at that point, they are building their characters in sort of the way a traditional game would at this point in 2025, but it's all virtually brought over that way.
Yeah, I raised the question because we ran a game at Long Island Tabletop, not this year, but the previous year, and we had a couple players who had only played online, and they had just had some skewed ideas of like character creation and what things should be and how to play their characters, and we were kind of like, you've been playing for 2 years. Why don't you know that your monk should have wisdom and dexterity?
Yeah, well, that's for sure.
Yeah, we had to tone it back. I had set the level up for 6 level 4 adventurers, so everybody basically had 1 feat, a decent amount of hit points, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, these guys aren't doing too well. What's going on here? And the dead Professor Scott was our second dungeon master. He was going around the table helping. I was running the game, and he was saying, oh, maybe try this and that, to help him out. And then he actually looked at some of the characters I allowed them to bring, and he's like, whoa. I mean, not even min maxing. Then they weren't even trying to power game. They just they were min. Just min.
They were minning.
Yeah, they were minning.
It definitely happens. One of my other games, the entire player base of the other game comes from a group of people I knew in an old MUD I used to play, a multi-user dungeon, a text-based RPG online game, and I played it for 30-something years, called Gemstone 4. And these were people that came from that environment. So they were very, very into role-playing. But when it came to D&D, so a couple of them had a lot of experience, a couple had none.
Yeah.
So, I had situations where I had a warlock who had equal intelligence and charisma.
Right.
And they started their character that way. I'm like, okay. And I just knew for the first few levels, I'm going to let them do what they want to do and let them figure it out. I put on my teacher brains, what I do for a living. And at some point I said, okay, when we get to about level 3, I'm going to start just kind of going over everybody's sheets and just giving some suggestions, things you may not know about the systems and the mechanics. You don't have to change a thing if you don't want to. And almost always people realize that you're telling them for a reason and they make the appropriate change.
Yeah, no, that's a good thing. I always do that with my people too. I always allow the first 5 levels that I'm really not enjoying this class. Well, all right, you give some time to figure it out.
Absolutely. Especially in the online environment. If someone's paying you, you can't tell them. I mean, really, you can't tell them, nah, I need your money, but you can't change your character. That's not going to happen. They will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if they're bringing it up,
Yeah, I mean, I never stop anybody from changing their character if they want to. I do ask, if possible, to keep the character. Change the mechanics however you want to. Switch the class, switch all that. If it's possible to keep this character in place, because that's the part that really breaks the role play situation. But I'm never going to be a hard liner on it because they're paying me money, so I'm not going to say no.
Absolutely.
So what type of mix have you been getting online? Has it been younger, older demographic, or just a good mix in the middle?
I've had a surprising mix. So I keep all my games to 18 plus for simple, straightforward safety reasons for myself. Again, I work with kids every day. I can't have any shenanigans. Start playing games does require any DM to have 2 forms of safety nets to make sure everybody's comfortable with the game. So it could be a session 0, it could be a consent checklist. There's a whole list of various things, and you have to tell the website which 2 you're doing. You could do more than 2, but you have to tell them which 2 you're doing. I always do a session 0. I think it's important for them to sort of understand each other, understand what the game's going to be like, and what the expectations are going to be, and then for me to figure out what they want out of the game. Because again, ultimately, and I do tell them this: you're paying me, you're entitled to a service. I want to make sure I provide a good one. So I've had people that have very wide variety of folk. Some who really, really like combat and don't care about anything else. Some who are absolute min-maxers and are immediately asking you to break every rule in the player's handbook so they can do things that they shouldn't be able to do. Some who are exploring gender identities through the game. Some who, feel bad if they misgender their own character in the game and then they don't want to play anymore. I've seen that happen too. So it really is a mix, and that's why, regardless of what you might be used to with your friends at a tabletop, these are going to be divergent people from a bunch of different places, and almost all of them are GMs. I find, I feel like this is like where the GM goes to find a game because they can never find their own group to be the GM, so they're always having to do it. So a lot of these folks, I think, do GM on their own with other people or DM on their own. So I think you get a lot of them in there too.
How many games are you currently running?
On Start Playing Games, I'm running 2. Aside from that, I'm playing in one other Foundry game, and I'm running 2 other Foundry games on alternate weeks. So I'm playing
all online. Yeah.
All online. Online. Yeah.
Nice.
My friend does do a really interesting mix with Foundry. I have to give him a lot of credit. What he does with his family actually is he bought one of those TV displays for tabletop, and he projects everything into it with Foundry. So he uses the map, but he puts the minis right on top of it, and he uses all the journal features in Foundry to put up notes, maps, player handouts, and everything. And it's happening right there on a 50-inch television on his family's table. Nice. So it's a pretty interesting mix.
Yeah, the Professor Scott, he has a game room in his garage, custom room. He built all like these shelves and stuff. Looks like a tavern, right? We have the overhead projector and we have a TV on the wall. So DM Evanson, when we do in Curse of Strahd, particularly, I guess we had a lot of those single still scenes, but they had some graphic overlay. Can you describe those, David?
Yeah, there was a Patreon. God, I can't remember his name top of my head right now, but he's pretty famous for doing Curse of Strahd layouts, moving scenery. He was featured a lot of YouTube people that used his artwork and such. So he basically has every room in the castle and every key location, either still or slightly moving or night and day. So it really paints a nice picture for when you're playing that. If you just want to throw up an image, like you were saying before, just paints it a little bit better sometimes if you're lacking words for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's the prep like, Professor J? Are you talked about reskinning the game and you're like, well, I don't like the reskin option of it. Are you reskinning? Are you kind of adding your own homebrew? Are you doing a combination? How much work are you putting into this?
I put a lot of work into it. I'm an over prepper for sure. The hourly rate on what you get paid for what you put in is definitely not worth it for sure. But every DM knows that. But yeah, I really do put a lot of prep in. Most of the games I run, I put usually significant amounts of homebrew into. Even if it's simply to port it into the world I prefer it to be in, but I'm kind of an eternal tinkerer. So aside from the Drakenheim game, the other game I'm running is based on an old Pathfinder adventure path called Curse of the Crimson Throne. Most people don't remember it anymore because it's aged at this point. But I run it several times in play by post and live play at a table. And so I thought it was one of those ones I really loved. I really enjoyed the story of it, and I liked my Eberron conversion of it. And I felt, well, if I fully convert it, do all the maps, do all the prep, do everything, it'll be done for the future. If I want to run it again, I have everything I need. Yep. So that's what I'm working on right now. And it's a lot of prep. I'd say for a 3-hour session on a Sunday, I'm probably prepping 10 to 15 hours between everything I'm doing to build it. Now, again, I'm building it. But yeah, if you're going to do an actual homebrew thing, it's about that.
Is your prep more, do you think, than a traditional in-person game?
Definitely.
Because
Only
of the
because
video aspects?
of the visuals, right? So I make a lot of use out of AI art, AI video, AI audio, AI voiceovers. So I have a narrator in my campaign because, again, I don't think I'm really that good at voices. So I have some pretty good AI voice software I was able to subscribe to that does a nice British woman's voice as my narrator. And so whenever I have I literally have cutscenes that I play in big moments of the campaign, like you would have in a video game, where I took my AI art, my AI video editors or video creators, and then my voiceovers, and pieced it all together in DaVinci, which is a free video editing software. Yep. And I've got a 2 to 3 minute cutscene that I can show my players as a big event concludes or is about to happen or something like that.
I'm a big fan of DaVinci myself.
Yeah.
The Dead Professor, can you talk to us about like what we've been doing in the live sessions, about the recording and how you're doing like our recaps?
So everyone, always jokes about either every player takes notes or no player takes notes and nobody knows what's going on the next week. So I started doing a full audio recording of the 4-hour session. And then we found online software that will take an entire 4-hour session, strip out all the non-game chat, summarize what happens, people, places, items, and give you the story of your last week.
That's awesome.
And it takes a 4-hour session and takes it down to about 4 minutes of audio. And then it's like, does everybody remember last week? Well, here it is. And it just a smooth recap.
Yep.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to have it even as the GM every now and then to listen to it.
And then in this case, I've structured it. Yeah, I've structured it like my character's journal, like she's writing in her journal.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
And DM Evanson, how about you've been using actually some recording also in our live session?
No, never heard of it.
And some voices, haven't you been doing that?
No, I've been doing the same thing he has. Not to the extent of having some of the software. I haven't dove into buying any of that yet. But there's plenty online that you could use that cost a little bit of money. But yeah, basically doing cutscenes, especially for consequences that they may not see that's happening behind closed doors. And I like to do that with my players every now and then. Yeah, it's cool. It's a nice tool to use, and especially online play, which is something I want to eventually mess with. So it's good to know, what's out.
Well, did you use 11 Labs or did you use something else?
Yeah, that's what I used to. Yeah.
So 11 Labs, we're not sponsored by them or sponsoring them, but
11 Labs,
it works really well, right?
It does.
So DM Evanson, with our live play session, how much time are you putting in for story prep first, and then miniature prep and design? Because you've actually had some pretty wild in-person
years.
Previously. And how big is your D&D miniature collection for the non 3D printed stuff, which we sell on Etsy? Check our store out. Links down below.
My non-printed stuff is not as much as my painted stuff. I should say. My non-painted stuff is a lot, but
no, I'm talking about the purchased official WizKids items. You seem to have a pretty large collection of that specifically.
Yeah, I started collecting that back, I guess, with 2014, I guess, when they started releasing those. Just to have as a backlog when we were playing at our local shop. We didn't have any minis that we did Theater by the Mind, or we would borrow minis from local table or minis that were being sold. We'd borrow, permission, or we get permission to use them. And eventually I was like, oh, you know what? I'm just buying the group. You're a dwarf, or I'm buying you a dwarf. And I bought them. And then I was like, you know what? Let's buy bad guys. And then next thing you know, I had all the minis. So when I ended up running it, it was perfect. And I just been slowly adding on over the years. But yeah, I have tons. To the point where I had to put it away because it just collected dust. But yeah, it's nice. They've gotten better, though. You can't beat what you can see on a computer screen, but they've gotten better.
So, Professor J, you must have a large collection then of, is it Photoshop assets? Is it tokens that
Digital
way?
assets.
Yeah, tokens is usually the word they use. I'll be honest. I try to keep it relatively consistent. Like in the video you played, it's kind of inconsistent. Some of the tokens are just square pictures of the character's face.
Well, let me take a second to interrupt you, and we'll put up this other thing. So here we have like a chessboard, and this is I'll replay. That's a super quick video.
Yep.
Oh no, it's not. Well, it's moderately quick.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna go off right now. It's this is a boss mechanic, and this is something I could do in Foundry that really is not that easy to do sometimes in tabletop unless you have a map. But what I did is basically copy like an MMO mechanic. Like these are 4 swirling areas of bad stuff. Get away from them, kind of thing. And they do as you see. All those tokens there, I had to create myself because I wanted to have like kind of a unified vision or unified look to my games. Again, part of like the marketing of selling a game. So if you join my game, I'll make you a customized token. And, each one takes a while in AI. I did manage to create an AI model that was very good at delivering a kind of isometric top-down look for a token. So
those look great.
Yeah, they came out really, really well. And, they're
high-end. Let me interrupt you. What token are you talking about? All of them?
So all of the characters there are considered tokens. And, with the exception of the Fire Elemental. The Fire Elemental is a standard, comes standard with the Foundry system. All those player characters. So the fellow on top with the green and sort of silver armor, the redhead girl, the girl in white, the paladin in red, and then the thief in the black cloak on the right. All those were made by me in my AI model.
Yeah, it's good. That's really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I mean, in our games, Scott and the dev professor and myself, we 3D print models, and then we have, I'll paint them, or we have some good painters, and we say, hey, listen, you're the good painter. We got the models. Can you paint them up? So everybody has their own character. They're really excited over it. So I imagine the people must be excited over having their own little character token also.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a selling point because it's something where I could tell somebody, okay, like give me an image of what you think your character looks like, and I don't even tell them why I want it. And usually they'll give you something off Pinterest or something like that, and then I turn around, make it into an isometric 3D, top-down model like that, and then I even sometimes will do things like add these models animated to the videos of the cutscenes, and you'd be surprised how good the results could be sometimes. In one case, I had to. One of my conceits that I use a lot in Everon is I have an NPC I love named Porter Page. And Porter Page is a gnome reporter for the Korenberg Chronicle. She's utterly unscrupulous, and she is a yellow journalist. So she'll run around and make up any story she wants to get headlines. And she follows the players almost everywhere they go. When she snaps photographs with her camera, I want to make sure that the photographs are in the Korenberg Chronicle. So, thanks to the power of AI, I could take 2 of my tokens here, tell the AI, take this character and that character, make me a newspaper photograph from turn of the century style newspaper of these characters fighting a steampunk scorpion on top of a moving lightning rail train, and I got that picture. And I was able to throw that up there for the players, as an in-between sessions teaser, so they don't, they keep them excited for the next session. Oh, look, you guys made the headlines in the Korenberg Chronicle.
It's great.
So how do you feel about the use of AI? We've been using it. I enjoy using it, but I also enjoy photography and Photoshop. So I'll take my own pictures, try to modify them. I'll do an AI picture. I'll bring it into Photoshop. I'll modify it, make it transparent background, cut it out. Or sometimes, if we just need something simple, sometimes they look a little cartoony. But, we want to be able to show, oh, you came across this bartender, and just something to show. Or, we came across this creature. And I can draw. I can paint, but it's just so much easier sometimes just to be able to put something in order to have that prep time. So how do you feel about the use of AI and kind of where it's going?
I see it from a lot of perspectives. Again, I'm a professor and I'm a teacher, so I'm battling it all the time on the academic level, and we're losing flat out. We just are. Every time a system comes out that can detect it pretty well, there's somebody out there is able to prove that it's not able to be reliable on it.
Yeah.
So there is that element of it for sure. On the other hand, it's also a freight train that's not going to get stopped no matter what anybody really says, right? So in this case, it helps me deliver a better product to people. It's that simple. Is it all that different if I went online and stole 100 images from Pinterest and I also didn't credit the author? In my mind, not particularly.
But the average person can't go out there and you would like to pay an author and artist. The average person can't go out there and be like, oh, could you make me these up, and I need this and that, and you might need 100 different assets in the course of a month.
Yeah, and I need it by Monday.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
For one NPC, I did contract on Fiverr with a man from Romania who had a perfect accent for one of my NPCs. Yeah. And the AI could not do an Eastern European accent well at all. It sounded awful. So I did go out there. I found him. His name is Crispin.
Wow.
He's very, very good.
That's cool. Very cool.
It was very reasonably priced. I have to say, it was like $5 got me 50 words, and that's a lot of speaking.
It's a lot of speaking.
You don't need a lot for an NPC's voice, and he did a really good job of voicing a very important NPC that really gets the campaign going. So I was very happy to have him voice this character. It was a character I've used many, many times over the years, and it was a joy to see his voice in real, not just sort of generated by an AI. But in reality, could I do that for every NPC? Could I do that for the bartender? No, I couldn't. No, definitely not.
Yeah, I was very funny. One of our our alternate DMs when we play Call of Cthulhu, he's a theater professor at Suffolk, and he actually had some of his students do voiceovers of text and stories that were in the Cthulhu game.
That's awesome.
Interesting.
That particular voiceover was somebody who found like a magical tome, and it was Chthonian, horror, and he was reading it like he was in the Arctic, and it was like creepy, and he was really getting into it, and it was amazing. But he used Adobe Audition, and he had all those assets.
Sure.
The Dead Professor found, I don't know if you can pull it up, Scott, the bastion for the church, if you have it handy, particularly.
Sure. Yes, I do.
He found, do you remember the name of the Patreon?
Tom Kartos.
Tom Kartos, again, not sponsored. So Tom Kartos, he uses Photoshop to make Photoshop files, but in Photoshop itself, they click and snap into place. So we're doing bastions, and Scott really took it upon himself as the creative director. We all kind of agreed upon what the bastion would look like. Mm-hmm. Scott was clicking and snapping and printing it out and gluing it together, and then also doing a bigger version in Photoshop, and having a friend of ours who has access to a large format printer printing like a 2 foot by 3 foot printout.
That's awesome.
Table of the bastion.
Yeah, that's great.
Share this one.
You could just
present image file.
James RPG Art is the gentleman who was doing all the Curse of Strahd photos. Just wanted to give credit.
James RPG Art. Yeah, so his photos, he would show like the blue bore in, and it was like it kind of like the sky was moving a little bit, and then later in the adventure, this is a spoiler alert, or possible spoiler alert if you're listening. It was on fire, and then it was the same, and we're like, no, burnt down.
Right.
I guess in some worlds maybe it doesn't. Maybe you can avoid that situation. In our world, it seems like everything burnt down.
But yeah, he has a very nice art stuff on Patreon if you want to check him out. He also does other settings as well, but
yeah, those are exactly the kind of things you would use for Scenescapes and Foundry. This exact kind of photo.
It's fantastic.
Right.
There you go.
All right, the professor, the Dead Professor we have two professors tonight, the Dead Professor Scott and Professor J. The Dead Professor has found our bastion. And so each individual asset, what we're looking at here is like they have a hallway asset, they have a tavern room asset, a library asset, an arcanum asset, and you kind of pick and choose what's in your bastion. And then, the Scott put this together and clicked it all together in Photoshop, and it's just amazing. Now, do you think, Professor J, we could take something like this and import it into Foundry?
Easily. I could do that in 10 seconds. If I had the file, it's a 10-second job, maximum. Wow.
And then moving the characters around and doing a fog of war, that's just an overlay related to that. Once it's in there.
Yeah, so I mean, the easiest way to do it, if you have the grid already on the image, that's fine. You can arrange the grid in Foundry, the actual system of the Foundry, tabletop, and just arrange the grid so it lines up with the grid on the map, and then you have no troubles whatsoever. Sometimes it is easier to have a gridless image in the background, and then you just put the Foundry grid on top of it, and you can adjust the opacity of that grid. And if you don't really care about grids, like for example, if it is your boundary, you don't have to worry about combat movement. You can just shut the grid off, and people can move wherever they want to move.
Okay. Scott, on this one, were the assets available gridless and gridded?
That grid is actually the Photoshop backdrop. Those are floor tiles that are actually not 5 foot. 4 of those is 5 feet. So those hallways are 10 foot wide. So that's not actually the grid. That's the tile pattern on the floor.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. I didn't realize that. So
you can easily adjust that in Foundry.
So, Professor J, what levels are you currently running for the paid campaigns? And are you getting into bastions? And sometimes we do a shopping spree. I tell you, 2 sessions ago, the entire 4 hours we're playing was a shopping spree.
We
let's find that, make magic items, make scrolls.
Mm-hmm. I try to keep the downtime to the downtime. So if they want to do crafting and things like that, I try to work it out so that in between weeks they can feel free to do that. In my Curse of the Crimson Throne campaign, the players have reached the city of Flamekeep, which is my stand-in for Curvosa, which is the main city in that campaign. And they can go to any neighborhood they want on the map of the city. And when they click on that neighborhood, they're presented with a scenescape of the neighborhood to give them a sort of feel like the Midlands is like middle class, Bridgefront is lower class, the industrial section of East Shore is over here. And then when they get to those maps, there are, it's a map of what it looks like, first person perspective. And then they can click on various shops and buy anything anytime they want to, as long as they're in that neighborhood. I don't mind. In terms of levels, they just hit level 4. The Drakenheim campaign has hit level 9.
Okay.
So they're about to have a big, sort of real big war going on. I don't want to spoil anything because it's a major part of the campaign, but there's about to be some really big battles there. Both sides are accessing the Bastion system, but I take it in a slightly different way. What I found was the system where it's rooms didn't really work for a lot of my games and a lot of my players. So what I did instead was I've been purposely dropping in from level 1 NPCs that are these minor NPCs that show up, and they're in almost every campaign, whether you make them or whether you buy the campaign. They show up, they serve a purpose, and they kind of fade off camera. And I've been collecting them as a list. And I kind of grouped them under, this is an arcane kind of person, this is a warrior, this is a thief, this is a merchant. And rather than selecting, the arcane study Bastion room, instead, every player builds like a henchman list. And so you'll get the exact same benefit from the arcane study if you instead use Father Malachi, the priest who you saved on the first adventure, whose only job was to be saved. And he becomes one of your buddies, and you're kind of assembling your own little squad. So in one of the campaigns, one of the characters, his name is Cassavir, he's assembling his old regiment from back during the war called the Obsidian Talons. And they were like basically forward action terrorists who used to take on the enemies of Seer during the war. And so he's looking to replace all the specialists he used to have in the unit because his unit was killed. So he's got the local locksmith who was at one point sort of against the party, and now he's reformed. So he's his trap specialist. And it's kind of like building the A-team kind of thing. And the players like it because the NPCs matter. And then when I cook up an NPC, I don't have to throw him in the dustbin 2 minutes after the adventure's over.
Yeah.
I got you. Are you maxing out a certain level before you start over, or you haven't come across that cap yet?
Drakenheim caps out at about 12 by the way the adventure's written, so that'll probably happen there. In the case of the Drakenheim campaign, I've already told the players we'll take a break because I'm going to need a little bit of a break, and then I've picked another Pathfinder adventure path that I'm going to do after that called Curtain Call, which takes them all the way to 20, which I'm excited for because I don't think I'm spoiling anything, but that adventure is meant to start with level 10 or so players, where it starts with a local playwright wanting to write a play about their heroics from the first 12 levels of their careers.
Yeah.
So it's a celebration of their own careers. And then the plot goes from there. In the case of the Curse of the Crimson Throne, I don't know yet. That campaign really doesn't have a continuation. It's certainly not the one that's written. I'm homebrewing extensive amounts of it. It's if it's interesting and fun and people want to continue, I'll definitely continue.
Do you see any mistakes for a dungeon master starting out, or any advice you can give to somebody who wants to jump into this and run it?
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. The first one is don't worry about how you sound, look, or do. The people around you don't want to do it, and they'll be just happy you're doing it for them because they know it's not going to go any better. Second, no one cares as much about the thing as you do, so don't worry about it. If you write a complex story, a complex character, a complex background, a complex narrative, a complex dialogue, odds are good you're going to throw it out anyway, and nobody else cares. So don't get too invested in it. Never make a NPC that you love as much as you would love your own characters. Be willing to kill them all because the players are, and they'll know if you're trying to protect one for some reason or another. So try not to get too invested. The way I get around that, because I love a lot of my characters, is I have so many of them. If they decide to kill, the bastard of Flamekeep, one of my favorites, which my friend did kill, and he really, really, really made sure he was dead. I have 3 others I love too, so I can go to my second and third and fourth girlfriends there. But yeah, and just do it because no one else is going to in your group if you don't. So do it.
There was an author, and he was on a talk show. I don't remember the author's name. It was one of the famous ones writing kind of like this, like Jack Reacher type of spy stuff, or Nelson DeMille. I'm not sure what it was, but the talk show host asked him, the things you put your characters through, and the author kind of responded saying, he's like, oh yeah, I really screwed that character over. Oh, that guy really got beat up. But that's kind of the point. Like, the character's important, but the things that the character goes through, the author puts them there. And as a dungeon master, you're the author of the characters and of the world. And if a church burns down or like a character dies, I mean, it's like that was for a reason. It was to move the story forward. And the author said you have to be willing to really, not hold back because, it might be important for the story. And I guess it's true as a dungeon master too. You have to not be afraid to put the characters, even the players, put them through some pain and struggle, and that they can maybe, overcome that adversity.
Yeah, I had a few players who were messing with the wrong faction, and a pair of doppelgangers sent by the faction decided that we're going to pretend to be the players, murder the local priestess, and burn down the local church and blame them for it. My players did not like it, but that was the intent. They weren't supposed to like it. And they decided now it's time to go burn down that faction. So that'll be next week.
Yeah. That sounds like a good storyline. So DM Evanson, any questions or anything else you can think of for Professor J?
How long have you been playing for, or better yet, running?
I had hair when I started, and I was still in high school. Yeah, it's since the mid '90s. I go back to AD&D.
Okay.
When fighters were the only ones who got a Bastion, and it was part of their class kit, and that's all they got.
Oh wow. Okay.
Wizards got a tower.
What's that?
Wizards got a tower.
Yeah. Fighters got nothing. Fighters got
any other games you've been, besides Dungeons & Dragons, you've been playing, Professor J?
Yeah, a lot. I've been keeping pretty widely busy. A couple of PC games. I'm a Final Fantasy 14 guy. I enjoy that. I know it's like a dying game, but I do enjoy it. I've been playing that Fallen Avalon game. I don't know if you guys have picked up that thing, but that's pretty interesting. Where like the King Arthur world, King Arthur's the bad guy kind of thing, or his world's the bad guy. It's a pretty neat little PC game. It's pretty good. Getting back into miniature painting with Warhammer, and that's pretty much it. I keep very busy between my kids and my 3 jobs. I'm usually on the move doing something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
So are you doing the professional DM more for fun? Do you think the money is good? If somebody was saying, hey, I want to try to make a few dollars, maybe not to live on full time, but is it toy and candy money, or is it like, oh, I can make a few dollars doing this?
For me, it's definitely
is the effort? Is the effort not worth it?
Well, here's the thing: you got to be willing to do it for free anyway. If you're trying to do it because it's a job and you don't enjoy doing it, it's not gonna work out. But there are people, like I said, I've seen them. I know they're on there. Their games are full. They are getting paid, and they're making substantial money. But I couldn't tell you how they built that following. Some of these people are content creators. You'll find them on YouTube, and they're using that website, and their games are booked, and they have a very good ecosystem going, and I'm sure it's a fun time. But for me, would I make it a full-time job? No. Is it a nice way to make an LLC for some tax write-offs? It certainly is.
That's a good point.
So it definitely has some of that element to it as well. But I was doing it for fun anyway, and if somebody wanted to pay me, all right, that's fine. You can help pay for my AI subscriptions.
Dungeon Master tips: start playing for an LLC and write off all your books and your toys and candy that are specifically related to Dungeons and Dragons, and maybe even a trip to Gen Con you could write off. That should be some research, right?
I can neither confirm nor deny what my accountant said we could write off, but it's a substantial list for the first 3 years of your incorporation.
Yeah. Dead Professor Scott, my fellow Dark Alchemist. Any other questions for Professor J?
No, I mean, that was most of them. My curiosity was really the ebb and flow of the players. How do they sit in the group? Like I said, my one experience with it in 6 months, 3 of us stuck around, and then the other 3 were probably 9 different people over 6 months. And that to me was hard as a player, and I can't imagine how hard it was on the Dungeon Master trying to just write new people in constantly.
In my one game, I have had some turnover. So I had 3 players who were there from the beginning. I had a 4th player who joined 2nd or 3rd session, and she's been around since, which has been great. And then the 5th spot has been a flux. I've had 3 or 4 players in it. In one case, someone joined, said they loved my onboarding process, loved my enthusiasm. They gave me a tip on start playing games. Players can do that. And then never showed up to their first session. Okay. I had another player who built a very particular character. I don't know. Maybe it really didn't fit their vision. They played. They said they had a great time. They made the Kornberg Chronicle in their first adventure. And they said, thanks, but, it's not going to fit my schedule. Okay, no problem. So, I mean, people do definitely come and go. One of the things that I use to help me with that is all my players in that particular campaign come from an imaginary order that I built out of nothing. And so they're like the next recruit that graduated into the field unit kind of thing. So at least you have whatever background you want, but you ended up in this order at some point and you've been sent in, sort of like, you've been subbed into the game. It at least keeps things somewhat consistent for the players as they have a similar goal set.
Yeah.
So I do have one final question. I'm sorry, Professor, did you have something?
No, I was just saying it's kind of what we did with the Meyer game where we set them up as the Monster Hunters Guild.
Yep, same deal.
Yeah. So we have the Monster Hunters Guild, the Silver Fang Society, hunting on Meyer's End. And there's the A team, the B team, and the C team. The A team is the Aurochs. The B team is the Basilisks, and the C team is the Cockatrices.
Nice.
And so the C team goes out, A and B, they're doing their thing, and the C team's there. They're kind of investigating, and eventually they'll get promoted up, until somebody better comes along or you're dead. And then any new players come in because I'm going to do some one shots for us.
So does that mean the C team members are dead if they get promoted?
No, the B team has to die.
Yeah.
And it does feel bad. I have some bad news for the current B team, which are all NPCs. But I think because of the way the adventure is, they might have to perish. So our actual player characters can now grow into the new role, and that's just part.
They can always retire.
Rip.
No, nobody retires out of the swamp.
Not in the swamp, baby.
Not in the swamp. But yeah, we're really enjoying that world. So let me ask you this final question, Professor J. And let me just put this banner up one more time. If anybody is joining us late in the program, join Professor J's game on Start Play. This is the actual link here, /adventure. There's a long code, but the links will be in YouTube and in Twitch. And in the podcast too on Podbean. I'll put that link there, so they can find Professor J on Star Play and jump in on his games and follow his adventures and fill up his group for that 5th player spot. That one spot's available. You did offer to us at some point, and no rush on it, to maybe run us through a game.
Sure.
I would love to have DM Evanson, David, and I would love to have the Dead Professor Scott. And I actually messaged a friend of mine who I haven't seen in years. I've actually never seen him. But I used to play Star Wars. I used to play Star Wars Galaxies with him every night, and we would just sit around and chat in front of the dancing girl while and he became a good friend. And I talked to him online, but I haven't had a chance to play a game with him. So I asked him, hey, maybe if the time lines up, maybe if it's okay with you, Professor, we could bring him in. So it would be the 4 of us.
Sure.
And it would maybe be a one shot.
I know exactly the encounter I would do.
So that leads to the question, without giving out a counter, that leads to the question. You are doing campaigns. What kind of one shot would you run, or do people run one shots on Star Play?
They do. There is a whole system for one shots. I don't know how popular they are. I tend to do campaigns. I assume that's what most of the players want in general. because I think people are much more willing to part with, say, $20 every session if they feel like it's building towards some sort of greater narrative. But $20 for a 3-hour session or something like that. I mean, the way I actually started was with a free game. That's how I started to build sort of reviews and I just put up a free game. Sure. You could do that. I would come on, guys, come play for free.
Okay, cool.
And that's how I did it. So there is a one-shot adventure system on there. You could say, I'm just running one shots, and here's what I'm running. People do like a West Marches style on there as well. It's sort of like every player signs up. I run out of spots. That's my game for the week. What adventure do you want to do, guys? The guild board has 5 options, and they run them. And then the next week they clear all the players, and whoever wants to join can get in there for the next one. And it's sort of perpetual, but not. For me, a one shot that I would run in Eberron, I'd use Eberron strengths, which is the steampunk technology, the pulp action, and the willingness of the bad guy to be truly bad.
Okay, I like that.
Like the sound.
So yeah, we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you outside of the interview to set that up again. No rush on it. We do look forward to it. Everybody gets busy in life, so. So that's it. That I learned a lot about being a professional paid DM. I had a lot of curious questions. I appreciate you taking the time to come. I'm here. Dead Professor, anything else?
I was going to say, we're doing one shots for the channel. If you want to come sit at a table and play in person, Jay.
I'd love to. I never get to play. I'd love to. That'd be awesome.
That's what Absolutely. I figured.
Yeah, we're doing what we'll tell you offline. We're going to do is we still have to do it. We're going to film these one shots, but they're going to be true, little short scenarios that are going to be challenging, and they're going to be all sorts of levels. We'll have a level 4-1, a level 10-1, level 12-1. Awesome. And it's really going to focus on a particular monster each week that you're going to have to kind of investigate and then, culminate into like a battle because, people want to see fighting. We want to see how it goes. Yeah. It sounds like a good time. DM Evanson, any parting words of wisdom to your fellow Dungeon Master?
Nope. Be good to each other.
All right. Well, thank you, Adventures. I appreciate it. This is supposed to be recorded, but it's a live stream. I'll try to get back in here Sunday morning to talk about maybe some of our characters in our world. Links down below for Professor J, and you can follow us on Dark Alchemy Ltd. Dark Alchemy Ltd on Instagram and all the socials. And you can follow Dungeon Master Evanson at DM_Evanson, that's EVENSEN on Instagram and on Twitch. Thank you, Professor J. I appreciate talking to you, and have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it very much.
Jay, after the end stream, you can stick around and we'll chat a minute.